Alright guys, in today's video we're gonna have a look at what I believe to be the 3 most important things to look at when you're analyzing data for yourself or for your son or for your driver that you are coaching, whatever. This is Starlane, the software that I'm using. It's called MAAT, M-A-A-T, because we use that in our team at BabyRace. But I also use a lot the AIM system. I will make a video for that as well. But right now in this video we're going to focus primarily on the MAAT Starlane. It's very intuitive, I would say. The idea is just to understand the concepts behind this video. So what the 3 things I believe to be the most important when analyzing data, and then you can reproduce it to whatever data logger system you use, be it Micron, be it Unipro, be it Alfano, whatever. So let's stay tuned and get going. So what I believe to be the 3 most important things when I look at data, because I do that on my daily basis at the team. I basically look after performance mostly, and obviously I'm also the team manager together with my brother at BabyRace, but I specifically look after performance and do data coaching with the kids. So what I look at the mostly is these 3 aspects, which are the braking point, which includes also the braking efficiency. The second point is the throttle pickup, all right? So how early or how late you went on the throttle. And that includes also the dead zone, which we could call it like a 4th one, but let's include it in the throttle pickup. And the third point are the lines, the racing lines. So that's why we use the GPS, and hopefully the GPS is always doing a good job at reproducing the lines that you guys are taking on the track. So these are the 3 things, then we have to, obviously there's so many other things we can look at, like longitudinal G, lateral G, combined G, to see like how the chassis is behaving overall, and that's more for tuning the car. Then we're like looking at exhaust temperature here and there. That's towards like carburation wise. Those are other things that are also very, very important, but not in terms of like coaching the kid. So when I talk about coaching, I believe obviously if we're looking at drivers, either mini or juniors, from 7 years old to up until 14, if we include juniors to be from 12 to 14, I believe this age period is the most important one that we should give more attention, more and more attention towards coaching and actually developing the skills and the driving style, I would say. And obviously, as in any ladder, in karting, going from karting to formula, you need to be a late breaker, you need to be a hard breaker, and you also need to get on the gas relatively early. Obviously, you don't want to be too early that you create push understeer, so there's a certain limit, but you don't want to be late. So obviously there's an ideal spot, an ideal braking spot in each corner, in each track, and in each track conditions, because you could be braking in one place with a very, very slippery circuit, but then the next day the track gets very grippy and you have to brake later and harder, all right? So this kind of things are very important to bear in mind. And when you become, let's say, the GOAT of your class, when you become like the best version of yourself in terms of racing driver, you will realize these things come effortlessly. But when you're starting out, when you're still inexperienced, you will have to really focus yourself on these 3 key aspects. So as we said, the braking, including the braking spot and the braking efficiency. Then is the throttle pickup, and the third is the racing lines. Obviously then you have the steering smoothness and all the other things, but you can't really detect them on I would say the average data logger. Obviously if you have a steering sensor and you look precisely at the G-forces, then you can obviously look at the steering inputs. But I would say those are a consequence of your braking point and your like aggressive, like how much you're pushing into a corner, and in terms of obviously braking and acceleration. So you will find out that the more you are aggressive, the more the kart will rotate on its own. So the steering will become less, and that will be beneficial for the speed, because obviously, especially with minis and juniors with low power, the steering can always kind of slow you down. So let's go back at it. Let's have a look. For example, so we have 2 drivers in a final at Sarno at the WSK. You could see they were both very quick. They were both fighting for the win, and they were really up, always top 5 the whole weekend. So 2 really good drivers. But obviously there's something that in this specific laps, okay, in this specific session, you can see they were doing differently. Okay, that doesn't mean one is better than the other. It can be that in a specific corner, in a specific session, he was doing a better job than the other. That's what I like to look at it, more than, oh, this guy's more talented, he's braking later. No, sometimes he brakes later, sometimes the other kids brake later. If obviously he's able to do it repeatedly, then obviously in the long run is probably the better driver. But let's not fixate, oh, this guy's better, oh, this guy's worse. So let's have a look. The yellow is, for example, let's look at the braking point. So as we said, the number 1 aspect we have to focus on is the braking. The second one is the throttle pickup. The third is the racing line. I would say the racing lines, if you're starting out, or if you're really like at the beginning of 60 Mini, or you're like literally getting into the sport, or your son is getting into the sport, then the racing lines is the most important thing. Even more important than the braking and the acceleration points. Because most of the times the kids can get lost, especially at first. They don't realize they can use all of the track available, and they may feel afraid, oh, you know, I may drop a wheel, I may spin, or I may crash. But actually that's the best thing you can do to increase the speed in the corners. So let's have a look, for example, when we talk about braking. All right, starting from turn 2, which is this one in Sarno. It's not a very heavy braking spot, but it's one of the few ones here at Sarno. There's this one at turn 2, there's this one at turn 8, then the last one at turn 13. The typical thing of this corner is that you are not really braking on a straight line. You're always kind of like turning a little bit, so you're obviously have to be very aggressive, but always bearing in mind that the rear is going to kind of step out if you overdo it. But you can see the red here did a better job. The red here was able to brake later. How can I make it more evident to you? I will make this zoom, which I really like to do. You can see obviously it's not very aligned in this corner, I would say. It's more aligned like that. But you can see the red did definitely a better job. He was able to brake deeper. So in terms of overall gain, he gained 1600s, because why? You can see the delta time value here. He did 6 seconds 73, and the other kid did 6.789, including a bit of the exit. So he gained 1.6 tenths just on the braking, which for me was remarkable. And he didn't lose any that much on the exit. So the yellow had to definitely make a step forward here to match this kid. Why? Well, maybe they had something in the front that was holding him up, or maybe he just missed his braking point, and he actually he was a bit too cautious. He didn't want to make a mistake, but obviously that caused him to lose time there. Let's now look at the other braking point on the track. Okay, this is the turn 8. In this case, the yellow does get a really good exit, which was different from turn 2, which he didn't. But you can see he still has an issue on the brakes. Okay, you can see that his intensity is actually equally matching the other kid, so it's pretty good. It's really good, but he still does it pretty early. So overall on the brakes he still loses. You can see the delta goes up, okay, but then he somehow gets to get a massive rotation and really get exit. Like, that was perfect. But why I think the red can be justified in this case, because I believe the red had an overtake. It was very likely to have an overtake. So in this case, despite being in an overtake, you can see the red just lost 200, sorry, the yellow just lost, actually the red is still quicker. It's crazy. The red is still quicker despite an overtake. So it's 590 against 592. Why? Because he gained so much on the brakes. Look, just up until the apex, look how much he gained. He gained 1.6 tenths, 271 against 287. He gained 1.6 tenths on the pure braking. Then obviously he loses out on the exit. So all in all, it's like pretty much equal. 669, 68, like actually he ends up losing 100 if we include the whole exit. But that's, including an overtake, so I would say it's quite remarkable. So I think the red still did a better job than the yellow. Let's now look at the other braking spot of the track. Okay, let's look at the previous lap, because this lap the red did something strange. I think they were fighting. But you can see, let's also look at this, even though they're fighting, and I believe the line is going to be defending. I mean, here we have our lap beacon, so unfortunately we cannot see the line very well on that lap. But let's look at what happens. The yellow, in this case, is able to brake really late and really hard, whereas the red is forced for some reasons to brake very early, which is a bit unusual for the other corners because he hasn't really been doing that. But you can probably guess that, oh, maybe he was being held up by somebody that was defending or whatever. Maybe he was defending himself, I don't know. But you can see it definitely ends up braking, I would say, 1578 compared to 1592, about 12, 13 meters or even 14 meters earlier, which is very unusual. And obviously the time loss is massive up until the apex. It's 358, again 340, it's 2/10. I would have speculated it was more, to be honest. I didn't think it would be that little. But let's now have a look at the same corner, the previous lap. How do I do it? Just go, oh, I can either change it in the there, or I can look it from here. So again, the red still didn't do a good job in the last corner. So it looks like the red is really strong on the brakes in turn 2 and turn 8, the other two corners we mentioned. But in this last corner, we checked it two laps in a row, it's not doing great. You see, he has to brake earlier. Here's the RPM. RPM graph is very good at showing you how intense is your braking. Because unfortunately, we don't have any brake sensors or like whatever, like calipers to tell you how much percentage of brake you've used, how much pressure you've used. So you basically have to kind of guess looking at this. I mean, we can use these sensors in the testing, which we do sometimes, but we can't, it's banned in the races. Like it literally, you cannot use any brake sensor, throttle sensors and steering sensors in the races across the whole race week, like from when the qualifying starts. So, I mean, but why? Does it mean we can't tell where where our drivers are braking? No, we can guesstimate with very high accuracy, I would say, the intensity of braking and where they're braking. So you can see that when the RPMs drop, that's when their braking is occurring. And you can see that the steeper they become, look, I will show you like that. So let's look. So the steeper, like in this case the red, the steeper they are, like this, all right? I'm not a very good at drawing, but you, like, actually I will put it down here, let's say, for example. The steeper the braking are, okay, the slower, so the quicker you will be at the accelerating. So the more you will slow down the car, which is a positive thing. Whereas, like in the yellow case, it's not slowing it down very much. Obviously, so let's make an example, it's like this, for example. I mean, they look parallel, but actually it's more like that. Let me try again. It's like a little bit less, yeah, exactly, it's like this. Something like that, and then in the end it goes like this. In some rare occasions, like, not rare occasions, but when the grip is allowing you to smash the brakes even more and to really lock them up like crazy, you're able to like pump, and then it comes off a bit. But it's like, this is when you're locking out the brakes, this is what happens, really. It's very sharp. So you can see that, but the opposite is this, like if you're braking very badly, this is what is going to happen. Now, I'm taking two examples of two really, really strong drivers, really good drivers, that obviously do a great job, and so you will not notice a big difference between them. Notice that in this case, I believe both of them did wrong. Why? Because both of them basically, so the yellow one had less efficiency, but he braked later, and despite having less efficiency, he still managed to stop and get a great mid-exit, which to me is sensational. The overall gain of the yellow in this corner is huge. If you include the exit, it's a 10th, but when you're racing in WSK, a 10th is huge. But it's funny because it's like, I would have speculated it was more, because it's basically the speed is up all the way through the corner, entry, mid-exit. And in vice versa, like conversely, the red is braking a little bit earlier. Actually, it seems like they're braking almost in the same spot, but possibly it's a little bit harder and a little bit earlier, which makes it very efficient. Like it makes it slow the car down very, very nice and early. Okay, so what it could look like to me is that if I shifted forward, okay, this is what I think the red should have done. The red should have done this kind of braking. He should have done, obviously, forget about the exit because obviously it's shifted, but the red, with this great efficiency that he had, I believe he could have braked a bit deeper. than what he did. But anyways, so this is the corner that I just wanted to explain to you. If we go back to turn number 2, again, you can see in this case the red and the yellow have similar braking shape. I can overlay to them. They're quite similar, but obviously the red is releasing the brakes a little bit more in this phase, which is then obviously making him, you know, it's making him go a little bit faster up at that point. All right. But it's not always the best thing to do, because obviously you want to roll a little bit of speed, but you don't want to roll it too much, because obviously if you come off the brakes, the chassis becomes a bit flat. You get some push understeer there, so you don't want to overdo that. Look, let's look at turn 5 here. In this case, the red overbraked. That was not a good thing at all. I want to believe there was like a driving mistake induced by some other drivers around him, because he did lose a lot here. But you can see, so you don't want to brake hard everywhere. Like, you don't want to brake as hard as you can, as late as you can everywhere. In this case, look, the time loss is, it's like about a tenth in there, because obviously there's some corners where you actually have to flow in the speed, especially in Sarno being such a fast flowing track. You don't want to be all the time like locking the tires, and that would be so stupid that you would, like, other than destroy the tires, but you would kill your lap time. So you have to pick the places where you have to brake really hard and late. Okay, and obviously in other spots you would have to still brake a bit late, but obviously you don't want to be on the edge of locking up the tires up every single corner. You have fast corners, you have slow corners, you have medium speed corners. This turn 5 was to me like a medium to slow speed corner, and you didn't require a lot of braking because you arrive only at 85 kilometers an hour, and the minimum speed is 65. So there's a 20 kilometers difference between braking and apex. If conversely you look at turn 2, you arrive from under 13 and you arrive to 65. There's about 50 kilometers difference from the, so that to bring that speed down, you have to brake harder and for longer. And then obviously you can look at again the shape into turn 9. They're very similar. They're, as I said, this is the kind of shapes I like my drivers to have. Very deep, like very hard, and very like holding them for a long time so that the car stops very well. But obviously, you know, in future videos I will show you the difference between a poor braker and a very good braker, so you can tell more the difference. I will do that. And the second point we said, the second most important thing you have to bear in mind when analyzing data, which you also have to work on your driving, is this throttle pickup. What's a throttle pickup? Well, I guess you can understand it from the, obviously from the words. It's where you pick up the accelerator, where you pick up the gas, however you want to call it. Again, we don't have any throttle sensors in races. You can't. Unfortunately, it's not like Formula. You can have every kind of sensor you want. But for some reason, they're limiting the amount of sensor you can run. So basically, you can use RPM, like obviously the speed is either like integrated in like with the GPS, or you have like a speed sensor, a magnet, or you have the exhaust temperature, and then you have the water temperature for water. So you have to, for like juniors, for seniors, for KZs, meaning we don't have any water cooling system, so obviously we don't have any water temperature. So why is important the throttle pickup? Obviously, because as I mentioned before, you need to get a great throttle pickup that is not too early and not too late. You know, obviously the biggest mistake, the most likely mistake to happen from newcomers, like the beginners, is that they're braking too soft, they're braking too shallow, they're throttling too late. Oh, they also braking too soft and braking too shallow. So let's actually bring that back. They are very, like, typically like the beginners are like early on the brakes, soft on the brakes, late on the gas, and then missing their lines, like completely using less track than they could, like being too tight on the entry, being too tight on the exit. So let's now break down the second problem, which was, as we said, the throttle pickup. So there's obviously in every corner, in every track, in every conditions, in every also based also on your setup balance, because sometimes your car balance is very loose and it requires you to pick up the gas a little bit earlier, or instead if the car is a little bit understeer, it requires you to pick up the gas a bit later, otherwise you get even more push understeer on the exit. So you need to also judge it really on the conditions. But typically, given that hopefully all of the cars over the team, or of like hopefully given that your chassis is good enough, then you should be able to match the throttle pickup of the quickest drivers. So, as I said, the biggest issue and the most likely, like most common issue, is to go into the throttle too late. And obviously in such long tracks like this one, they can cost you a lot of lap time. But look, sometimes being too late, just a little bit later, can even be beneficial. Like, it's not always better to be earlier on the gas. Sometimes when you go too early on the gas and the speed doesn't go up, it's because it's actually too early. It's like you want to go on the gas in mini like just before the apex, like almost at the apex. In juniors, about the same, probably a little bit late, like at the apex. Same for seniors, and I would say KZs, that's a bit different in terms of driving, but you want to like mini target like a couple of meters before the apex, something like that. Because if you do it too early, then what happens is you're gonna get really like push understeer. Sometimes the kids are gonna do brake and gas just for the sake of, oh, there was the earliest on the gas, but I still don't get the exit. Why is that? Well, because if you do that and you get push understeer, or you do like brake and gas like some kids do, which is a very bad habit, then what happens is that you will get very bad exits. So in this case, what you target is that when you pick up the gas, from when you pick up the gas to when then the speed goes up, there has to be very little time. There does a little time or little distance, whatever you call it. Like now we're looking at distance, so the meters you see here at the bottom is their meters. If I shift it to this, it becomes time, right? So this numbers here, they're the seconds of the track. So let's go back to it, talking about the distance. So you can see here that the yellow goes actually slightly later on the gas. It's a line like this. The yellow goes slightly later on the gas. The red seems to be going at the gas at 59 meters. The yellow seems to be going on the gas at 63 meters, so about 3-4 meters later. You can see in the map here where we're talking about this. Okay. So actually, let me write it down with the pen so you can let me erase everything. So you can see one is going on the throttle here. That's when the line stops going down, it starts going back up, and the other goes up there. So let's make another color. Yes, about here. If I make the difference between, like, say this, let's say if I make like a difference from this to this, and I make like a distance, you will see, going back to this, that is about 3 meters, 4 meters. But how come the red doesn't get a good exit there? Well, you know, there could be the argument, oh, he doesn't have such a good engine, or, you know, the chassis maybe is not doing good, there's a bit too much grip on the exit, it gets stuck, or whatever. I believe maybe the red was a little bit too early on the gas, which, as I said, it's typically better to be slightly on the earlier side and on the late side. But in this case, something happens, and despite going on the gas early, it doesn't get a very good exit. Yeah, but guys, in this case, we're talking about a little bit. When the beginners are starting out, they're like 20 meters late, 15 meters late, 10 meters late, and they don't get any exit speed. So yeah, that is something to bear in mind. Let's look at the other throttle pickups across the track. So here is flat. You will ask, why is that exhaust temperature going up and down despite being full throttle this corner? Because when you hit the limiter, basically there's a electrical cut and basically change the exhaust temperatures. Like, I don't want to go into detail with that. Let me actually there you go. I have to basically rescale it because sometimes in some corners you back off so much that it goes down. So let's look at this case. So for example, the red brakes deeper, it gets on the gas in the right spot. In this case, it was the yellow doing the wrong thing. So you can see the yellow goes slightly before the throttle on the red. It's like 597. It gets a little bit of an exit here, but it's not justifying everything that is lost on the braking. And still, it doesn't get such a big exit despite that. The red is going on the gas at 599, so a couple of meters later, but still gets a really good exit for the braking that he got. Here you can see they're exactly the same point on the throttle. So what differentiates the speed here is probably the chassis not working very well for the red, I would say, or the fact that the line is a little bit tighter. You can see he kept the line a little bit tighter, didn't let the car run out a bit wider, so he kind of stopped the car a little bit too much with the steering. So I would say that's my speculation why that was issued. And here, basically the red did the car corner full throttle, the yellow didn't. He just made a small lift. Now we already watched here that the red had to make an overtake. It makes sense, yeah? The red had to make an overtake, so he has to go on the gas a little bit later, not so much, just a couple of meters later. Despite that, it kind of, obviously because the radius of the corner becomes narrower, it goes tight in, wide out, too much steering on the exit, and then he doesn't get an exit speed that he wants. But then here again, look, the red in this case, get early on the gas, he gets a better exit initially, but then I believe he runs a little bit too hot on the exit, and so he starts to lose here. You see the speed. So despite carrying a lot of minimum speed by getting on the gas early there, it doesn't get the exit he wanted. So you can see that throttle pickup is key. I'm looking at two really good drivers, like literally. I know it's probably better to look at more difference between drivers, which I will do in further videos, but I wanted to show you also that it's not always correlated. The earlier you're on throttle, the faster you go. The later you go on the throttle, the slower you go. No, well, most of the time, yes, but when you get to a certain point where you're pretty good, then there you have to be more strategic about when you go on the gas. It's not the earlier the better, okay? It's not always like that. It can be actually do damage at point, in mini especially. Let's look at the lines now. Obviously, we were talking about the lines being the third most important thing I would focus on in terms of telemetry analysis, coaching, for the young kids, for the kids that are starting out. You can see that the lines obviously are slightly changed between corner to corner. It's almost impossible to get the kids to be on this exact same line. But what we normally want is to see the corner being as open as possible on the entry and as open as possible on the apex. Like normally the higher the radius of the corner, the better. Obviously, if the track is dirty on the inside or the outside, these kind of things, we obviously have to kind of be flexible with that. But in an ideal scenario, with the track having the equal grip across the track, you want to go for the shortest distance, so have the perfect like radius, and also open up the entry and the exit so the corner becomes bigger, which is the reason why when you go tight to make an overtake you get so slow at the mid exit, because obviously you have to make the corner tighter. So every time we see that a driver is opening up the corner more, he's quicker, period. Obviously, if he overdoes it and he goes off the track, or he bumps off the curb and he scrubs speed, that's another story. But in this case, the red marginally opens up the entry, which allows him to brake a little bit later, as we said here. It doesn't seem much, but this is almost a car length, and the car length is enough. It's like 1.5 meters to the left in this case, allowing him to carry more speed and gaining time. How much? We mentioned it was like 1.5 tenths, which is quite extraordinary. In this case, it was the opposite. The entry was quite similar from both. The yellow though on the exit opened up the corner more, and you can see the yellow gain there, about a tenth. And you can see why, because probably when he picked up the gas, he opened up a little bit the steering and he let the car run a little bit smoother. In this case, it was the opposite. Again, the red now gains. Okay, why? You would say, well, you can see on the entry, he opened up the corner a little bit more, so he made a wider entry. The exit was quite similar, even though the apex was exactly the same. The exit was a little bit wider for the red, so again, use a bit more track. That resulted in 2 kilometers more speed here, 2 kilometers speed there, so pretty much a big gain, alpha 10th gain also here, so that's a lot of time. Obviously in this case he had to overtake, so the time loss is quite big, even though for being an overtake he only lost like a couple alpha 10th, which is to me is extraordinary, which is what top drivers should look for, losing only alpha 10th to 1/10 for an overtake, not more, otherwise you're not overtaking the right way. You can see he had to make a tight entry, and because of that he kind of washed wide on the exit, and you can see he kind of sacrificed a bit of speed at the apex, even though not that much, but he actually ended up sacrificing more on the exit, all right, because he went too wide there. I mean, you want to be wide, but obviously there's a certain point where going too wide puts you off the grip, and then you will lose time. So here I would say the GPS didn't catch it very well. But I would say that still the red liner was a bit better overall, because he was able to prepare this left quick corner very, very well, carry much more speed through the corner. Overall, if you just look at the pure corner, he actually ended up gaining, but then he had some problem in the exit, I guess bottom over the curb, or maybe the fact he lacked any like he lacked slipstream compared to the yellow, gave him a lot less speed on the exit. But if you just look at the pure corner from turn 10 to 11, he actually gained. He gained 1.3 tenths, 559 against 572. If you make the calculation, is 72 minus 59, it should be like 1.3 tenths. Yes, 1300, so it's 1.3 tenths. So he actually gained there, but then obviously he lost it all because he probably went a bit too wide, probably bottomed out, and obviously the slipstream, I guess, was highly effective for, like, ineffective for him because he didn't have any. So yeah, so this is to show you, and obviously here there's the beacon that is cutting out, so we can't really check it. But here's to show you how much important the racing lines are. And most of the times when the racing line is spot on, you will get a better speed into the corner than the other driver or compared to yourself. And that's our goal, you know, where the goal is to be the best on the brakes, to be the best on throttle pickup, to be the best with the lines, and the rest will come, you know, steering smoothness, consistency, they will all come later. But once these three aspects are mastered, you will see your results are going to skyrocket. You're going to do so much better. So if you're the driver and you would like to put more effort in that, please do. I mean, ask your coach, your telemetry, and a guy to look at these three things in more detail. So the braking, including the efficiency and the braking point, the throttle, so the throttle pickup. You cannot see the modulation, but oftentimes in mini especially, it's like on off. You don't really have a lot of modulation unless you're talking about wet weather driving. And obviously it's very important to monitor the lines. I mean, sometimes GPS may do some funny things, which is, by the way, important for you guys to remember to switch on whatever device you have, AIM, the Starlane, the Unipro, the Alfano. You have to switch them on, give them enough time for the GPS signal to be at best. So you have to wait like at least 30 seconds, I would say, before driving. It doesn't mean that, oh, you know, I'm starting the race, I switch it on, I wait until that's fine. No, obviously, you know, it's more important to go when it's supposed to be going. But be focused also with that. When you get into your car, switch it on early enough so that it actually gets all of the GPS bands and everything to give you great data afterwards. All right, guys, otherwise it's gonna be completely offsetted and it's not gonna give you any great value. So right, guys, I wish this was helpful. Please let me know in the comments below if you have any questions, if you would like to have some videos related to that or some different kind of videos. I'll be happy to respond. And please support the channel by liking, subscribing, and we'll see you in the next one.